I didn't know how fast a moment could change everything until it happened to me. It wasn't loud or dramatic. There was no thunderclap, no sudden swell of music like in the movies. Just the quiet sound of breathing, his and mine, and the faint hum of a street lamp flickering through the blinds. Then his hand moved, slid. It wasn't supposed to go where it went. Or maybe it was, and I just hadn't let myself believe it. Either way, when it did, when his fingers lingered just long enough to make me forget how to breathe, I knew nothing would ever be the same. Funny thing is, I spent weeks pretending I didn't notice him watching me across the kitchen, or leaning a little too close on the couch, or brushing his hand accidentally when we passed each other in the hall. I told myself I was imagining it, told myself I was safe from wanting something I couldn't have, but I wasn't. I wasn't ready. Not for him, not for the truth, not for what came after that one small touch. Sometimes I wonder if he knew, if he felt the shift the same way I did, if his heart skipped the way mine did when skin met skin and I couldn't look away. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence between us and wondering what would happen next. Now, I know, and I can still feel it, where his hand went, what it meant. How I changed, everything changed, and it started with that one simple slide. The first thing I noticed when I walked into the apartment was the smell of cologne, clean, citrusy, with a hint of something woodsy underneath. The kind of scent that lingered in the air and made you wonder about the person who wore it. I tried not to let that thought spiral as I kicked my suitcase against the wall and glanced around the living room. Minimalist furniture. One throw pillow that said, "Chill, bro." A half-empty bottle of whiskey on the counter. This was definitely not the dorm-style setup I was used to. This was a grown-up space, or at least someone's idea of one. I barely had time to take it all. And before I heard footsteps and a voice from down the hall, "You must be the new roommate." I turned, a little startled. He was barefoot, wearing sweatpants and a white t-shirt that clung a bit too well to his chest. Tousled brown hair, a lazy grin, and those eyes, the kind that seemed to see more than they should. I felt my throat go dry. "Yeah," I said, managing a stiff nod. "I'm, Liam." "Ethan." He stepped forward and offered a hand, which I shook probably too quickly. "Good to meet you, man. Welcome to the palace." I glanced around again. Palace? Okay, maybe a discount castle. You get used to the squeaky pipes and haunted fridge. I laughed despite myself. "Good to know." He gestured toward the hallway. "Your room's the one on the left. Bathrooms shared. I promise I only steal towels, not souls." I chuckled again, awkwardly. "Noted." We moved my stuff in mostly in silence, though Ethan kept tossing out little jokes and commentary as we worked. I responded with polite nods and quiet thank yous, trying not to overanalyze every smile he threw my way. He had this energy, like he was always on the edge of saying something inappropriate, but somehow charming enough to get away with it. Once everything was dumped into my room, he leaned against the doorway and crossed his arms. "So, what brings you to this part of town?" "Job, mostly. Graphic design internship." He raised an eyebrow. "Ooh, creative type. Nice. I work at the bar on 9th. Tips aren't bad if you flirt a little." I offered a weak smile. "Noted," I said again. He smirked, like he could tell I was uncomfortable but chose not to push it. "Anyway, feel free to make yourself at home. I usually keep things pretty chill. Just don't blast polka music at 2 a.m. and we'll get along." "No promises," I said, and he laughed again, a low, genuine sound that made something in my chest tighten. That night, after he'd disappeared into his room and the apartment went quiet, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling. I kept replaying our conversation, every word, every glance. I told myself it was just because he was new, because this whole situation was new, not because I found him attractive. Definitely not that. I'd spent years mastering the art of silence, of not reacting, not showing too much, not letting anyone guess what I was thinking. It had kept me safe, mostly, but something about Ethan made that armor feel a little thinner than usual. The next few days passed in a blur of unpacking and pretending not to watch him move around the apartment like he belonged there. He sang off-key in the shower. He cooked shirtless, eggs and toast, always with hot sauce. He asked too many questions and remembered too many of my answers. Once, while we were both brushing our teeth at the sink, our arms accidentally touched. I tensed. He didn't. I wanted to believe it meant nothing. I needed to believe that. Because flirting with Ethan, or worse, falling for him, was not part of the plan. Still, there were moments, a lingering glance, a laugh that felt too intimate. Once, I caught him staring at me from across the room, eyes unreadable, lips parted like he was about to say something, and then didn't. I told myself I imagined it, that he was just friendly, that I always overread things. But late at night, when the apartment was still and my room felt too quiet, I remembered the way he smiled at me, the way his voice dipped a little lower when he said my name. And though I tried to push the thought away, one truth kept creeping back. I was already curious about where his hand might go. It started with Netflix. One lazy Friday night, Ethan popped his head into my room holding a half-empty bag of popcorn and said, "You watching anything? Or just pretending to be antisocial again?" I rolled my eyes but followed him into the living room anyway. We settled on something random and vaguely dystopian. He tossed me a blanket, scratchy but warm, and plopped down next to me on the couch like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't think much of it at first. But one episode turned into 3, and then it became a habit. 2 or 3 nights a week we'd end up there. Lights dimmed, feet propped up, blanket pulled over us both. The distance between us seemed to shrink a little every time. Sometimes our knees would touch. Sometimes his arm would stretch along the back of the couch, just behind me, fingers lightly brushing my shoulder. Just enough contact to make my skin. I told myself not to read into it. He was touchy with everyone. I'd seen him toss an arm around his friends at the bar without a second thought, but when it was me, it felt different. We talked more during those nights. About dumb stuff at first. Shows, music, his co-workers, the crazy guy down the hall who hoarded soda cans. But gradually the conversations deepened. He asked about my family, about what I wanted to do after my internship. He listened in that rare, undistracted way, like what I said actually mattered. One night he asked if I'd ever been in love. The question caught me off guard. I didn't answer right away. Just stared at the screen, where 2 actors were kissing like the world was ending. Sort of, I said finally. But it didn't end well. Ethan turned toward me slightly. Yeah? I shrugged. It wasn't mutual. He was quiet for a beat. Then, people suck sometimes. Yeah, I said. Sometimes they really do. He didn't push, and I didn't elaborate. That was the thing about Ethan. He never asked more than you were willing to give, but somehow he always made you want to give a little more than you planned. After that night, I started to notice things more sharply. The way his thigh would press against mine just a little longer than necessary. The way he laughed at my dumb jokes like they genuinely got to him. The way his hand would sometimes graze my knee when he reached for the remote. Small things. Inconsequential, probably. But they felt big. And the worst part? I started waiting. For them. I'd find myself hoping he'd sit closer, hoping our fingers would accidentally touch, hoping he'd glance at me the way he did when he didn't know I was looking. It scared me. How fast I was falling into something I couldn't name. Because what if I misread everything? What if he was just being friendly? What if I ruined this easy, strange, wonderful rhythm we'd found? I couldn't afford to lose it. One night, he dozed off next to me halfway through a movie. his head tilted toward mine, shoulder gently bumping mine, breathing slow and warm. I didn't move, didn't dare. The credits rolled. I stared at the black screen, pretending my heart wasn't hammering in my chest like it was begging for something I couldn't give it. I could have brushed his hand. I could have leaned in. I could have whispered his name and waited to see what he'd do. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, motionless, counting every second his body stayed close to mine, memorizing the weight of his presence. Because sometimes, the things we don't say are louder than the ones we do, and I was terrified of saying the wrong thing and losing him completely. I hadn't planned to go. Big crowds and loud music weren't really my scene, but Ethan had a way of convincing people to do things without ever actually asking them. So when he said, "Come on, it'll be fun. Besides, you never leave the apartment," people are starting to think I made you up. I couldn't come up with a good enough excuse. The party was in a house a few blocks from ours, packed wall to wall with people I half recognized from Ethan's friend group. The music pulsed like a heartbeat, the bass thumping in my chest. I hovered near the kitchen, clutching a red cup like a lifeline while Ethan disappeared into the crowd. I was halfway through my drink when he found me again, 2 beers in hand and that devil-may-care smile I was beginning to hate loving. "There, you are," he said, offering one. "Was starting to think you ditched me?" "Tempting," I joked, taking the beer. "But then I remembered you'd probably hunt me down." "Damn right I would." He winked, and I felt something flutter, low in my stomach. He stayed close after that, introducing me to people, cracking jokes, brushing against me every chance he got. When one guy from the bar leaned in a little too close to me during a conversation, Ethan casually stepped between us with a hand on my shoulder and a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You okay?" he asked quietly once the guy backed off. "Yeah. You didn't have to." "I know," he said, shrugging. "I just did." I couldn't tell if it was protective or possessive, and I didn't know which one scared me more. Later, when the living room turned into a makeshift dance floor, Ethan pulled me in with a laugh and 2 shots of something clear and dangerous in our systems. "I don't dance," I protested. "Sure, you do," he said, grabbing my hand. "You just don't know it yet." The lights were low, the music slow, surprisingly, something ambient and rhythmic, the kind of song that made you want to close your eyes and let go. Ethan didn't give me much choice. His hands found my waist, and I hesitated, but just for a second, before resting mine lightly on his shoulders. We swayed. Closer than we should have. His forehead nearly touched mine. I could feel his breath, warm and smelling faintly of lime and beer. Every time his hands shifted slightly on my hips, a shiver ran through me. "See?" he murmured. "Told you you could dance." I didn't respond. Couldn't. He leaned in, just a fraction. "You're kinda dangerous when you loosen up." I laughed, but it came out thin and shaky. "You have no idea." We danced until the room blurred around us, until I forgot where the music ended and where he began, and then we were outside. I wasn't sure how we'd gotten there, whether we decided to leave or just needed air, but we were walking home side by side under a dark sky pulsing with distant stars and the low buzz of streetlights. Ethan's arms slid around my shoulders without a word. Natural. Effortless. I didn't pull away. "Did you have fun?" he asked, voice softer now, stripped of the party version of himself. "More than I expected," I admitted. We walked in silence for a few moments, my body hyper-aware of his, every step synchronized, every breath shared. Then came the moment. His hand, warm, deliberate, slid down from my shoulder, slowly, gently, across my back. It settled on the small of it, fingers splaying wide like he meant to memorize the shape of me. I froze. Not in fear, in something else, something tangled between shock and want. My breath hitched, my skin burned. He didn't move, didn't speak, and neither did I. We stopped walking, just stood there under a flickering streetlight, surrounded by quiet and the humming tension between us. I turned toward him. His hand stayed where it was, grounding me, unbalancing me all at once. Our eyes met, everything slowed. I could have leaned in. God, I wanted to. His lips were so close. Just one tilt forward and he pulled back. Just an inch. Just enough. Not yet, he whispered. The words hit me harder than any kiss would have. And then he kept walking, like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just touched me in a way no one ever had. Like he hadn't just planted a seed that would grow wild in the dark corners of my chest. I followed, silent. That night, I didn't sleep. My body still felt the imprint of his hand, warm, lingering, confusing. My mind played his words, on loop. Not yet, not never, not a rejection, just not yet. But what did that mean? And was I ready for when yet became now? The morning after the party, everything felt different, and not in the good way. Ethan was quieter. No winks, no smirks, no stupid morning hair jokes. He tossed me a casual, "Hey," on his way to the kitchen like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't placed his hand on my back and made my whole world tilt on its axis. I told myself not to overthink it. Then I did the opposite. Over the next week, the space between us grew louder than any silence I'd ever known. We still shared. The same couch, the same sink, the same dumb brand of cereal. But it wasn't the same. His laughter was more guarded. His touches vanished completely. If our arms accidentally brushed, he pulled away like he'd touched a hot stove. It hurt, more than I wanted to admit. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I'd leaned in too close. Maybe he'd felt me hesitate and taken it as rejection. Maybe he regretted everything. I started spiraling, rewinding our conversations, analyzing every word and glance, wondering if I'd imagined it all. Had I read too much into the dancing, the blanket sharing, the way he used to look at me like I was a puzzle he wanted to solve? I didn't ask. I couldn't. Instead, I tried to move on. Or fake it. There was a guy at the office, Jamie, tall, clean cut, nice in the way peanut butter is nice. He asked me out for coffee one afternoon, and I said yes before I thought too hard about it. We had 2 dates. He smiled a lot. He touched my arm when he laughed. He said all the right things. But every time he leaned closer, all I could think about was how it wasn't Ethan. I went home that night and found Ethan sitting on the couch, headphones on, scrolling, through something on his phone. He didn't even look up when I walked in. And that's when the anger started to creep in. Not loud, not explosive, just slow and thick, like molasses under my skin. He had no right to pull me in only to retreat, like that. No right to leave me hanging in that half space between something and nothing. I stopped trying to initiate conversation. He didn't notice, or pretended not to. A week passed, then another. Until one night I walked into the living room to find him on the couch, a beer in hand, eyes fixed on some crime documentary. He looked up, saw me, and offered the same flat "hey" he'd been giving me for days. I snapped, "Do you hate me now, or is this just your new thing?" He blinked, surprised. "What?" I stayed standing, heart pounding. "You've been ignoring me for weeks. Don't act like you haven't noticed." "I'm not ignoring you." Could have fooled me. He sat up slowly, rubbing his jaw. "It's not like that." "Then what is it, Ethan?" My voice cracked. "Because something happened. You know it did. That night at the party, you touched me like it meant something, and then you just shut off." His eyes darkened. "I said not yet." "Yeah? And then you made sure yet meant never." He looked away. "I didn't mean to screw with your head." "You didn't screw with my head," I said quietly. "You screwed with my heart." The room fell silent. He looked at me, finally, really looked at me, and I saw it. Guilt, fear, something softer, underneath. "I thought I was protecting you," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "From me. From this. I thought if I pulled back, you'd move on." I swallowed. "I tried. I couldn't." He let out a shaky breath. "Me neither." It was a Tuesday night, the kind of night that didn't mean anything to most people, but somehow became a turning point for me. For us. Ethan had picked up a cheap bottle of wine on the way home. "Impulse decision," he said. "Felt like a red night." He didn't say much else, just popped the cork and poured us each a glass. We sat on opposite ends of the couch again, but this time, the distance didn't feel cold. It felt, tentative. Like we were both inching toward a line, unsure if it was finally safe to cross. The silence between us was quieter than before, less punishing, more expectant. After the second glass, Ethan shifted, turning toward me slightly. "Do you want to play something stupid?" I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Truth or dare, except no dares. Just truth, or nothing." I chuckled. "So, just truth?" He shrugged. "Or nothing. You can pass, but no lies." I swirled. The wine in my glass. "Okay, you start." He didn't hesitate. "Did you mean to lean in that night? At the party?" "Straight to the bone." I nodded. "Yes, I was going to kiss you." He breathed out, relief maybe, or something heavier. "Okay, my turn." I stared at him. "Did you want me to?" A beat, then a slow nod. "Yeah, God, yeah." My chest clenched. I panicked," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "I've never actually done this before, been with a guy, I mean." I blinked. "Seriously?" He nodded. "I've thought about it. Wanted to. But every time it got close, I'd freeze. Or bail. Or pretend it wasn't real." He took a sip of wine. "I grew up in this tiny town where being gay meant being a rumor or a warning. You didn't come out. You disappeared." His voice cracked a little, and he didn't look at me. "I didn't want to disappear," he whispered. So I shoved it down, played the part, dated girls, laughed at the jokes. I thought maybe if I did it long enough, I'd forget the truth. I set my glass down. "But you didn't." He shook his head. "No. Then I met you." The air between us changed. "You didn't flirt like the others," he continued. "You didn't try to impress. You just existed. Quietly. Honestly. And it scared the hell out of me how badly I wanted to know everything about you." I swallowed hard. "Then why'd you pull away?" "Because I thought I'd ruin you," he said. "I thought if I kissed you, I'd mess everything up. I didn't think I was allowed to have that kind of happiness." There was a long pause. Then it was my turn. "First crush," I said. "Who was it?" Ethan chuckled softly. "A guy named Danny. High school. We were lab partners. He had terrible acne, and the best smile I've ever seen." I smiled too. "Mine was my swim coach. I was 12 and didn't understand it at the time, just that I liked being noticed by him. He never did anything inappropriate, thank God, but it messed me up. Made me feel like something was broken in me." "You ever tell your family?" Ethan asked gently. "Sort of," I said. "Came out in college. My mom cried for a week and then pretended I'd said nothing. My dad just asked if I was sure." "Mine still don't know," Ethan said. "They ask about girls. I tell them I'm focusing on work. It's easier." "Is it?" He shook his head slowly. "No, it's just quieter." We both went quiet. Then, our third glasses untouched on the coffee table. The world reduced to the space between us, a space that suddenly didn't feel so wide anymore. I reached across the couch and touched his hand. He didn't pull away. He looked up at me, eyes glassy, searching. "This is real," I whispered. "What we've been doing, the tension, the mess, the wanting, it's real." He nodded slowly. "I know." I leaned in this time, no hesitation, and he didn't stop me. Our lips met, tentative at first, soft, testing, but then it deepened, like we'd been holding our breath for weeks and finally remembered how to exhale. His hand found my face, fingers, threading through my hair. My thumb brushed his cheek. We kissed like everything we hadn't said was spilling out through touch. When we finally pulled apart, we rested our foreheads together, eyes closed. "You okay?" I asked. "I am now," he said. And for the first time in weeks, maybe longer, I believed it. We didn't rush. There was no script, no checklist, just breath and heat and closeness. The soft hush of the apartment pressing in around us as the rest of the world faded, like it had been waiting for this moment to happen. Our lips met again, slower this time, deeper, like we were relearning something that had always been ours. Ethan's hand found my face first, then my jaw, trailing down, the side of my neck. Every touch was deliberate, unhurried. My skin lit up under his fingers like kindling finally catching flame. "I've thought about this," he whispered, voice low and rough. "So many times." I didn't answer, just nodded, breath hitching as I leaned into him. He pulled me closer, and our bodies aligned, chest to chest, heart to heart. I could feel every inhale he took, and how it stuttered when my hand slid under the hem of his shirt. Then his hand moved again. Slow, confident, familiar. It slid down my back, tracing the same path it had that night outside the party. But this time I didn't freeze. This time I leaned in. And this time, I was ready. I wasn't afraid of what it meant anymore. His palm settled at the small of my back, fingers splaying like he was claiming space, not just on my body, but in my life, my heart. Our foreheads pressed together again, breaths mingling. My eyes fluttered shut. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. There was something sacred in the way our hands explored, the way we touched, like we were mapping a story written in skin. Every sigh, every gasp was a word unspoken, a truth neither of us had dared to say until now. And when we finally lay there, limbs tangled, hearts slow and full, I knew where his hand had gone. Not just to my skin, but to the part of me that had been waiting, aching, for someone to reach without flinching. He didn't flinch. He stayed. The morning light spills in soft and golden, brushing across the sheets like it's been invited. Ethan's still asleep, one arm draped lazily. Across my stomach, his breath warm against my shoulder. I lie there watching the ceiling. Not because I can't sleep, but because I don't want to miss this. This stillness, this joy, this us. Weeks have passed since that night, since the kiss, since the closeness, and yet it still feels new every time he looks at me like I'm something precious instead of something to fear. I used to live in silence, afraid to speak, afraid to feel too much or say too little. I used to think love was something that happened to other people, people braver, bolder, less breakable. And then Ethan. He crashed into my world with his laughter and his sideways smirks, and his stupid habit of eating cereal straight from the box. And somehow, in all his chaos, I found my calm. I never expected to fall in love with my roommate, never expected a flirt-turned-friend to become something so much more. But now that I can't imagine life before him, before the slide of his hand, before the ache turned into something soft, safe. He stirs beside me, blinks the sleep from his eyes, and smiles the moment he sees me looking. Then, without a word, he slips his fingers into mine, slow, certain, like he's done it 100 times. "You're home now," he whispers, voice still thick with dreams. And I believe him, because everywhere his hands go now, there's no fear, only love.